Welcome to the deep dive. You're here because, well, you want to get straight to the good stuff, right? Grab the key knowledge, have those aha moments without wading through everything.
Exactly. And today we're diving deep into something really powerful, the work of Byron Katie.
Think of this as your shortcut to understanding a method that promises a way to untangle those stressful thoughts and find some genuine peace.
Yeah, we've really immersed ourselves in Katie's own writings, specifically excerpts from oceanoffpdf.com for this, like the work of Baron Katie-byronkatie.pdf.
Hmm.
Our mission today, pretty simple. Break down the core principles of the work. How does it actually lead to personal freedom?
And the origin story is, well, it's pretty wild. This wasn't cooked up in a lab or a university.
Not at all. It came directly from Byron Katie's own intense struggle. Years of severe depression, barely able to leave her room, apparently.
And then one morning, bam, a complete shift, a realization that changed everything for her.
That's the bedrock of the work, that realization. She saw crystal clear that her suffering wasn't actually caused by the world outside her. It was caused by her beliefs about the world. Simple as that. When she believed her thoughts, she suffered. When she didn't, the suffering wasn't there.
Wow. Such a fundamental insight. And that became the foundation for this whole process.
A process anyone can use to find that same clarity, supposedly.
It's fascinating because you hear echoes of, Socratic questioning, maybe some Buddhist ideas, even 12-step programs in its structure.
Right, but the thing is, she developed it totally independently.
Yeah.
No formal background in any of that. It came purely from her own direct experience.
And what's really appealing is how simple it seems. Pen, paper, and open mind. That's it.
Anyone can do it. Any age, any background. It's not about getting answers from someone else. Katie really emphasized that the transformation comes from your own insights.
Self-discovery, empowering people to see their own truth.
Okay, let's jump into that core insight then. What did she actually realize?
Okay, so the absolute central idea is this. Suffering happens when we believe our stressful thoughts, especially the ones that argue with reality. Right. It's not what happens that's the problem. It's our resistance to it, our thoughts about it.
Exactly. Like if you're mad because someone isn't doing what you think they should do,
Uh-huh.
you're essentially arguing with reality. You're saying, this shouldn't be happening, but it is happening. It's a fight you just can't win.
She has that great analogy, doesn't she, about the cat?
Yeah, the cat barking analogy, it's brilliant. Trying to teach a cat to bark is pointless, right?
Yeah, it's just gonna meow.
It's just going to meow. And wanting reality to be different than it is, well, Katie says that's just as pointless. You're arguing with what is.
And we do it all the time without even realizing those little thoughts. People should be kinder. My commute shouldn't be this bad. I should have more money.
Yep. Every single one is a little argument with reality. And according to the work, that's where all the stress comes from, that internal battle.
Okay, but here's a question that probably pops up for people. If we just accept reality, don't we become, like, passive? Do we just give up on changing things?
That's a really common concern.
Yeah.
But Katie flips it. One of the core questions in the work is, can you absolutely know that that's true? Is it true that accepting reality makes you passive?
Mm,
Think about it. What's actually more empowering? Stewing over, I shouldn't have lost my job.
right. Which keeps you stuck.
Or accepting, okay, I lost my job, it happened. Now what? What intelligent solutions can I find right now?
That makes sense. It's not resignation. It's a starting point for actual action.
Precisely. Acceptance as the foundation for effective action. Like she says, what you think shouldn't have happened should have happened. Why? Because it did happen.
You can't argue with facts on the ground.
Arguing with the past is wasted energy. It's not about liking the difficult stuff. It's about seeing it clearly without adding our own layer of mental torture on top.
And when you drop that fight, maybe your actions become clearer, more effective.
That's the idea. Actions driven by clarity, not by resistance or anger. Okay, so related to this is another key concept, staying in your own business.
Right. The 3 kinds of business. Let's break that down.
Okay, so Katie identifies 3 areas. There's my business, your business, and God's business.
And God here isn't necessarily religious, right? It's more like reality, things totally outside our control.
Exactly. Earthquakes, the weather, other people's choices, what they think, feel, do, anything that is fundamentally not up to you.
Okay.
Now, the insight here is how much stress comes from mentally living outside your own business.
Thinking things like, he should manage his time better, or she needs to understand my point of view.
Or even, it shouldn't rain today. You're mentally jumping into their business or into reality's business.
Yeah.
And the result,
Stress, separation, feeling disconnected.
yeah, she shares a personal story about realizing that whenever she thought, like, my mother should understand, she felt instantly lonely.
Because she wasn't present in her own experience, she was mentally over there with her mother.
Exactly. She noticed that every time she felt hurt or alone, it was because she was mentally tangled up in someone else's affairs. Who is minding your store if you're constantly worried about theirs?
It makes sense. Your focus is elsewhere.
And Katie's pretty blunt about it, thinking we know what's best for someone else. That's arrogance, she says, and it just creates tension and anxiety for us.
So the first step is, look after your own business. Understand yourself before trying to fix everyone else.
That's the suggestion. Focus inward first. And the potential payoff is huge. Just asking yourself next time you feel stressed, whose business am I in right now, can be incredibly grounding.
You might find you're spending a lot of mental energy on things you literally cannot control.
Yeah, and maybe, just maybe, we don't even have that much business of our own to worry about. Maybe life runs smoother when we stop trying to micromanage everything, including other people.
Okay, so we notice these stressful thoughts, these times we're in other people's business. What then? How do we deal with the thoughts themselves? This brings us to meeting thoughts with understanding.
Right. And this is a really crucial shift. Katie stresses that a thought itself isn't harmful. It's just a thought, like a cloud.
It's the believing it part that causes the pain.
Exactly, the attachment. The unquestioned conviction that this thought is the truth. A belief is just a thought you've held on to, maybe for years, without ever really examining it.
Those recurring stories we tell ourselves.
Those are the ones with the power. And she had this insight, like, thoughts just arise. It's not like we consciously choose every single thought.
More like breathing. It just happens.
Kind of, yeah. Thoughts appear, they float through, they disappear. Like breezes, leaves falling, raindrops. They aren't personal attacks.
So instead of fighting them or trying to push them away,
Meet them with understanding. Get curious. Investigate them using the process of inquiry we're going to talk about. You wouldn't fight a raindrop, would you?
no, that would be silly.
Thoughts aren't personal either, she suggests.
That feels liberating. If a thought isn't inherently me or true,
And once you meet a painful concept with understanding, through inquiry, the next time it pops up, it might not have the same sting.
what felt like a nightmare could become just interesting or funny, or you don't even notice it.
That's the potential she describes. The power of loving what is, which includes loving your thoughts enough to question them. Okay, so practically, how do we start this?
Putting the mind on paper.
Exactly. Step one, write it down. Identify those specific stressful thoughts and judgments causing you pain. Katie points everyone to thework.com for a Judge Your Neighbor worksheet.
Okay, so you print this worksheet and then think of a specific situation that's bugging you right now.
Yes, something current or something lingering. And here's the key part.
Mm-hmm.
Allow yourself to be judgmental. Like, really let it rip on paper. We all judge anyway, right? This is permission to just get it out, uncensored.
Even the petty stuff, the unfair stuff.
Especially that stuff.
Yeah.
Be as childish or harsh as you actually felt in that moment. Honesty on the page is crucial. You might find even nasty thoughts can be met with acceptance, at least on paper.
So for my situation, writing down the raw anger could actually feel freeing.
It can be. And she suggests starting with someone you haven't totally forgiven.
Ooh, okay. That digs deep.
Yeah, even if you think you're 99% there, that last 1%, that's often where the real juice is, where you might be stuck in other areas too. Think about who your Paul is in this context. Who pops into your head?
And why start by judging someone else? Isn't this about me?
Well, it is,
Right.
ultimately. But starting outward often makes it easier to be uncensored. We usually have very strong opinions about what others should be doing, right?
Yeah. Definitely clearer on their faults than my own sometimes.
Exactly. So you use that outward judgment as a doorway. Because here's the twist.
Okay.
As you investigate those judgments about others, you start to see yourself. You realize everything out there is a reflection of your own thinking. You're the storyteller.
Ah, like the projector analogy she uses.
Yes, perfect. We spend so much energy trying to fix the screen, change other people, change the world, hoping that will make us happy.
But it rarely works long term.
Because the problem isn't usually the screen. It's the lint on the projector lens, our own thoughts. The work is about cleaning the lens.
Got it. So the worksheet helps you identify the lint. How does it work? What are the questions?
Okay, so grab that situation, that person. Let yourself go back to that moment of anger, hurt, disappointment, no censoring.
Right. Be petty, be judgmental.
Exactly. There are 6 prompts. Katie used an example about her ex-husband, Paul, and his health habits, just to show how it works. Think about your own situation as we go.
Okay.
Question 1. In this situation, who angers, confuses, or disappoints you, and why? Katie wrote, I'm angry with Paul because he doesn't listen to me about his health. Be specific about the why.
So for my situation, I'd pinpoint the exact person and the specific action that bugged me.
Yep. Question 2. In this situation, how do you want them to change? What do you want them to do? Katie's answers were pretty blunt. I want Paul to see that he is wrong. Stop lying. Stop killing himself.
Okay, so this is my wish list for them.
Your demand list, really. Be honest about what you wanted from them. Question 3. In this situation, what advice would you offer them?
The shoulds.
The shoulds, Katie wrote. Paul should take a deep breath. Calm down. See, his behavior frightens me. No being right isn't worth dying over. Make your advice really practical for your person.
Okay. Step-by-step advice I'd give them if they'd only listen.
Exactly. Question 4. In order for you to be happy in this situation, what do you need them to think, say, feel, or do?
Shifting focus to my needs.
Yes. What change in them do you believe is required for your happiness? Katie needed Paul to hear me, take care of himself, admit that I am right.
What would fix it for me?
Question 5. What do you think of them in this situation? Make a list. This is the judgment list. Katie put, unfair, arrogant, loud, dishonest, unconscious. Let it all hang out, no filter. What labels pop into your head?
Got it. The raw judgment.
And finally, question 6. What is it that you don't ever want to experience again? Katie wrote. I don't ever want Paul to lie to me again. I don't ever want to see him ruining his health again. What's the thing you desperately want to avoid repeating?
Okay, the core fear or aversion in that situation.
Be specific, be detailed. Once you've filled that worksheet out honestly for your situation, then the real inquiry begins.
Okay, so the worksheet gets the stressful thoughts out of my head and onto paper. Now what?
Now comes the core practice, inquiry. You take each statement you wrote and investigate it using 4 questions and then finding turnarounds. This is where the potential shifts happen.
The 4 questions. Let's hear them.
Okay, for any statement like Paul doesn't listen to me, you ask, 1, is it true? Simple yes or no. If it's no, you actually jump to question 3.
Interesting. Okay.
2, can you absolutely know that it's true? Again, yes or no. This pushes you to look deeper than your initial certainty.
Questioning the absolute knowing. Got it.
3, how do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? Now you explore the impact. What emotions arise? What physical sensations? What images flash in your mind? How do you treat yourself or the other person when that thought is running the show?
Okay, really feeling the consequences of believing it.
Exactly. And 4, this is a powerful one. Who would you be without the thought? Imagine being in that exact same situation, but that specific thought just isn't available to you. What's left? How do you feel? What do you see differently?
Wow. Trying to glimpse reality without that filter.
Yeah. So you go through those 4 questions for your statement. Then comes a turnaround.
Turning the thought around. How does that work?
You find ways to reverse or flip your original statement. Usually you turn it around to the self, to the other person involved, and to the complete opposite.
Okay.
And the crucial part is finding at least 3 specific, genuine examples for how each turnaround is as true or truer than your original statement, right there in that specific situation you wrote about. It's not about blaming yourself. It's about finding other possibilities.
Let's try it with Katie's example. Paul doesn't listen to me about his health. Question 1. Is it true? Maybe she says yes initially.
Okay, question 2. Can you absolutely know that it's true that Paul isn't listening? Can you be inside his head? Can you know his internal experience? Maybe the answer becomes no.
Introducing doubt. Okay, question 3. How do you react when you believe Paul doesn't listen?
Katie listed things like feeling frustrated, getting a sick feeling, giving him the look, interrupting, punishing him later, feeling isolated, angry, lonely. A whole chain reaction from that one thought. You'd list your own reactions for your thought.
Right, seeing the ripple effect. Then question 4. Who would you be without the thought Paul doesn't listen?
Imagine being there with him smoking or whatever, but that thought just doesn't arise. What's different? Maybe you're calmer. Maybe you actually do listen better yourself. Maybe you see something you missed before. What would that be like for you in your situation?
Exploring that space of possibility. Okay, now the turnarounds for Paul doesn't listen to me about his health.
Okay, turn around to the self. I don't listen to myself about my health. Katie's example was realizing her own emotional state was out of control, heart pounding. She wasn't tending to her own health in that moment. How might that apply to you?
Mm-hmm. You can turn around to the other. I don't listen to Paul about his health.
Yeah. Was she really listening to him? Or just waiting to talk? Convinced he wasn't listening. Maybe he was trying to communicate something non-verbally. How might you not be listening in your situation?
And the opposite turnaround. Paul does listen to me about his health.
Right. Katie found an example. He actually put out the cigarette when she spoke, even if he lit another one later. It requires finding concrete evidence, however small, that contradicts the original belief in that specific moment.
So it's about finding genuine examples for each turnaround, not just forcing it.
Absolutely. Genuine examples from that situation.
Yeah.
And you do this whole 4 questions and turnarounds process for every single statement you wrote on your worksheet.
Wow, that's thorough. Okay, what about statement 6? The I don't ever want to experience this again. 1, you said it's different.
Yeah, that one has unique turnarounds. Instead of just reversing it, you turn I don't ever want to experience Paul lying to me again
Mm-hmm.
into I am willing to experience Paul lying to me again.
Willing. That sounds hard. Why would I be willing for something bad to happen again?
It's not about wanting it or liking it. It's about dropping the resistance. Saying, I am willing fosters a kind of open-mindedness, a flexibility. It acknowledges that, well, life happens, and fighting what might happen causes its own stress.
Okay, it reduces the internal fight against possibility. What's the other turnaround?
I look forward to experiencing Paul lying to me again.
Whoa! I look forward to it. That seems even stranger.
Again, it's radical acceptance. It's about seeing everything life brings, even the uncomfortable stuff, as an opportunity. An opportunity for what?
For inquiry, for understanding myself better.
Exactly. Seeing suffering or difficulty not as something to dread, but as a potential signal, a call to inquiry. When you see it that way, maybe the fear lessens. Maybe you can meet future challenges with curiosity instead of terror.
So it's about embracing all of life, the whole package, and seeing challenges as prompts for growth.
That's the idea behind those specific turnarounds for Statement 6. It's about cultivating inner peace, regardless of external circumstances.
Okay. Now, I imagine people have some common questions or sticking points when they first encounter this.
For sure. Let's tackle a few. Like, people often ask, this judging others feels uncomfortable. Can I just do the work on myself directly?
Right. Seems more direct.
Katie's take is that starting with judgments about others is often more effective for self-understanding. Why? Because we're usually less defended when looking outward.
Ah, we see others' flaws more clearly.
We think we do. And investigating those perceived flaws often mirrors back our own hidden beliefs and patterns. Plus, she notes, most of us have tried direct self-criticism for years. And how well has that worked?
Good point. Okay, another big one. How can she say reality is good when there's so much awful stuff in the world? War, poverty, violence. Isn't that just naive or condoning it?
Yeah, that's a really important one. She's very clear. She doesn't condone suffering or injustice. Her point is about our internal reaction.
Okay.
When you believe terrible things shouldn't be happening, when they clearly are happening, you create a war inside yourself. You suffer because of your argument with reality.
So her focus is on ending the internal conflict, the suffering caused by our thoughts about the external event.
Exactly. Can you stop torturing yourself with your thoughts about the terrible things? Start there, she suggests. End the war within.
What about just trying to accept reality? Isn't the work just a complicated way of saying, don't argue with what is?
Well, she points out that just telling someone, don't argue with reality, doesn't usually work. It's just another rule, another should.
Right. Easier said than done.
The work isn't about telling you what to do. It's a method for you to explore the effects of arguing with reality. How does it feel when you believe that thought? Who are you without it? You discover for yourself whether arguing or accepting serves you better.
It's experiential, not
Yeah.
prescriptive.
Okay. And loving what is. Does that mean you shouldn't want anything? No goals, no desires? Seems kind of boring.
Huh? Katie says she wants something constantly. She wants whatever is happening. And she finds that ecstatic, not boring.
Wanting what you already have. Yeah. When your desires align with reality, there's no internal conflict. Thought and action are congruent. If you feel lack, she'd say, that's just a thought to inquire into. Write it down, question it. She finds life provides what's needed.
What if my main stress isn't other people? Can I use this on, say, my body image issues or career worries?
Absolutely. Any stressful thought, any subject. Your body, money, success, failure. Put the thoughts on a worksheet.
And the turnarounds might involve my thinking.
Yes. She suggests trying my thinking in turnarounds for objects or concepts. My body should be thinner could turn around to my thinking about my body should be thinner, or my thinking about my body should be healthier.
Shifting the focus from the external thing to the internal thought about the thing.
Exactly. Is the problem really the body or the stressful thoughts you believe about the body? That's the question the work invites you to explore.
Okay, and a huge one. Forgiveness. How does this help you forgive someone who really hurt you?
The process is the same. Judge that person on the worksheet. Write down all the awful things you believe they did and why it hurt.
Get it all out.
Then take each statement through the 4 questions and turnarounds. Katie says forgiveness happens when you investigate your story and realize that what you thought happened didn't happen in quite the way you believed it.
Seeing through your own story about the event.
Yes. Until you can see the innocence in the situation, maybe their innocence based on their own unquestioned thoughts, maybe your own innocence, true forgiveness hasn't happened. It's about seeing reality clearly beyond your painful narrative.
So is inquiry just more thinking, trading one set of thoughts for another?
It looks like thinking, but Katie describes it as a way to undo stressful thinking. By investigating thoughts, you start to see they aren't necessarily true, they aren't inherently personal, they just arise.
And they lose their power when you don't automatically believe them.
Exactly. You meet them with understanding instead of resistance, and their grip loosens. The suffering dissolves.
It helps to hear some of those concise Katieisms she's known for. They really capture the essence.
Yeah, they're like little koans for inquiry. Things like, when you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time.
Ah.
An unquestioned mind is the only suffering. That's a big one.
Simple, but deep.
You either believe what you think or you question it. There's no other choice.
Puts the responsibility back on us.
No one can hurt me. That's my job. Meaning, through believing my stressful thoughts,
Right.
the worst thing that has ever happened is an unquestioned thought.
Wow.
If I think you're my problem, I'm insane.
Ouch. Direct.
Reality is always kinder than the story we're believing about it.
That offers hope.
And that one about forgiveness. Forgiveness is realizing that what you thought happened didn't happen the way your stressful story told it anyway.
Those really distill it down. Okay, so if people are intrigued and want to go further, what resources are out there?
There's quite a bit. For a deep dive, there's the School for the Work, which is a 9-day intensive.
9 days, wow.
Yeah, focused on really unlearning those core fear-based stories. There's also a shorter Nobody intensive about identity, and weekend workshops pop up too.
Okay. What about less intensive options?
The Store for the Work online has tons of audio and video recordings of Katie facilitating people on all sorts of issues. You can learn a lot just by listening.
And the main hub is the website.
Definitely. thework.com. That's where you find everything. Detailed instructions, videos, the event calendar, the helpline, which is free, facilitator info, the worksheet download.
You mentioned that.
Right. Interviews, apps, newsletter, the store. It's all there.
And for people who've done the school.
There's the Institute for the Work, which offers community and certification for facilitators, and for really depth-seated issues like addiction patterns.
Yes.
There's Turnaround House, a 28-day residential program using the work.
So lots of avenues depending on how deep you want to go, but it all comes back to the core practice.
It all comes back to putting your stressful thoughts on paper and meeting them with those 4 questions and the turnarounds.
Okay, so wrapping this up, the fundamental message seems to be suffering isn't inevitable. It comes from believing our unquestioned thoughts, especially those that fight reality.
And the way out, the path to freedom and peace, lies in having the courage to actually investigate those thoughts, to inquire.
So the invitation is really practical. Go to thework.com, get the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet,
Yep. Pick a situation that's causing you stress right now. Fill it out, honestly.
and then just try the 4 questions and turnarounds on 1 or 2 of those statements. See what happens.
You might be really surprised by the insights that come up, just from your own mind answering those simple questions. It's about finding your answers.
Discovering your own truth, not just taking someone else's word for it, and potentially finding a lot more peace and clarity day to day.
It's a possibility worth exploring, isn't it?
Absolutely. So here's something to leave you with, a final thought to mull over. Think about one specific thought, just one, that consistently brings you stress or pain, that recurring loop in your head. Now really consider, what might your life actually look like? What could change for you if you were to genuinely, deeply question whether that one thought is actually true?
That's where the real deep dive can begin. inside your own mind.